Hello everyone, in this video I'm going to be talking about some Japanese history books that I'm using for my research for my upcoming Japanese graphic novel. Let's get started. The first book I'm going to talk about is Japan to 1600, A Social and Economic History by William Wayne Farris. It's a very good book. They focus on the society and the classes, and they talk about the peasants. It mentions the sort of life they lived, and two things that got my attention in this. For example, the peasants were constantly under the threat of the Emishi barbarians. They were constantly raided by them. So where did the Emishi barbarians come from? They came from the north, that big island on the north of Japan, and they would raid them, attack the peasants, and steal their crops and their rice and things like that. And another threat that these peasants faced was the volcanic eruptions. For example, every time a volcano erupted, it would shoot ashes into the air and it would block out the sunlight. When you block out the sunlight, you would get cold weather. And when you get cold weather, no harvest, no crops. And because of these raids and volcanic eruptions, you had less crops, and a lot of peasants were unable to pay their taxes, be it rice, corn, or barley, and they were punished for it. And these peasants were given land by either the emperor, assigned land. Okay, you're going to work here, you're going to live here, you're going to grow your crops here, and then give a lot of the crops to me. Or the same way with a lord. So this is a good book in terms of understanding the social and economic history of Japan. Very good book. The next book I'm going to talk about is A History of Japan to 1334 by George Sansom, which is this one. He goes into a lot of detail to the history of Japan, particularly the political history and the government history, the religion, the people, the land, the feudal states and the regions, etc. I mean, this is a very detailed book. In fact, this is only one book out of three. There's this one here. There's the history of Japan from 1334 to 1615. Nice one. And the third book, A History of Japan from 1615 to 1867. So what we have here is quite an epic trilogy of Japanese history by George Sansom here. This is brilliant. I mean, I highly recommend this. Now, what I like about this book in particular, because this came in handy for the Genpei War and all the events that led up to it, because this explained the government and the political history. For example, particularly the cloistered system. Now, what is that? The cloistered system, or the cloistered government, let's say, was when it was created to stop the other clan lords from interfering with the emperor and his decision making. Because before that cloistered government system was created, a lot of the clan lords and all the daimyos kept on interfering with the emperor, telling him what to do, and he was always overwhelmed. So what they did was the emperors and the royal family created this sort of system where they the emperor would abdicate the throne, just retire and become some sort of like a senior monk. So he would get sort of like a religious guidance from the father or a senior or something like that. So this is it. And this is one of the things that caused the Genpei War, because some of the clans couldn't agree on which man should be the emperor or the monk emperor, and they couldn't decide on who should be the emperor and things like that. So it sounds politically complicated, but when you break it down into smaller pieces like this explains it very well. So I recommend this book. The next book that came in very handy is The Chrysanthemum Throne, as you can see here. This is kind of like a detailed list of all the emperors throughout the history of Japan. For example, it gives them the name of the emperor, and it gives us a very brief biography of each emperor and when did they rule, from when to when they finished. For example, Senka, for example, here, he ruled from 536 to 539. And this is a very useful book because this clarifies, who ruled when, because there's a lot of confusion over the names and the dates when you try to read the history of Japan, because it gets very complicated. But what's great about this book is that at the back of the book, there is a whole list of the names of all the emperors who ruled Japan. For example, it gives them the name, when they were born, the date, the year when they were born, the year they acceded the throne, and the year they abdicated, as in they abdicated the throne, they quit or retired, and the year they died. And this clarifies everything. For example, for the Genpei War, the thing that led up to the Genpei War, there was Shirakawa. There was Shirakawa, the guy who ruled, who from 1068 and abdicated in 1072 and died in 1073. Now, he was the real father, according to the books, he was the real father of Taira clan, of Taira Kiyomori, who would be one of the great, who would be the leader of the Taira clan. And during the time of when the Genpei War began, his son was also Goshirakawa. So in other words, Taira Kiyomori was the half brother of the emperor Goshirakawa. So at the same time, during that time period, the things that led up to the Genpei War, Goshirakawa was the emperor, and his father Shirakawa was the monk emperor. Once again, we go back to the cloistered government system. Goshirakawa gained advice from his father, the monk emperor Shirakawa. And this is a great way of understanding who did what to whom and when, and how they organized it. For example, who came before whom and who did what to whom. And in particular, even the ones who ruled very briefly, even if they were children. For example, once again, during the Genpei War, there was little Antoku. Antoku was the grandson of Taira Kiyomori. Now, he was born in 1178 and he died in 1185 when the Taira clan was defeated by the Minamoto clan. I mean, he was only Antoku, where is he? He was born in 1178 and he acceded the throne at the age of 2 in 1180. So he was a 2-year-old boy, and he was killed in 1185 when the Taira clan sort of started throwing themselves into the water during the war. I mean, it was a very tragic war, but so if you want to understand the whole lineage of all the emperors, this is a good book. This is the one to get. One little note about this book is it's called the Chrysanthemum Throne. What is the chrysanthemum? It's basically the name of the flower, which is this. This is what you see everywhere in Japan, and this is the symbol of the imperial family of Japan. So the next time you see a chrysanthemum, this particular flower, it just reminds you of the Japanese royal family, and that's what the symbol represents, and that's what the chrysanthemum is. It's basically a beautiful flower. Now, no Japanese history bibliography can ever be complete without any book from Stephen Turnbull. This is the Samurai, a military history, and this is the entire samurai history in a nutshell. How the samurai came to be, the rise and fall, the battles they fought, and all the things involved in the samurai, all the way down to their decline after the Meiji Restoration. So if you want a short history of the samurai, this is the book for you. This is an awesome book. It's one of my favorite books of all time. But if you want a little more detail, there's this book, the Samurai Sourcebook. This is basically similar to this, but it goes into a little more detail. For example, the battles they fought, who did what to whom and why. For example, the personalities and the heraldry, the arms and the armor, the strategies and the military tactics. And all these things in one book right here. And if that wasn't enough, there is this giant of a book. Oh yeah, this is Samurai, the story of Japan's great warriors. And almost every page has a beautiful illustration to go with it. There's some diagrams. For example, here's an example of the sort of armor they would wear, like this. There are some photographs and the weapons they used. Again, accompanied by some beautiful Japanese prints, like this here. See that? Amazing stuff. And what else is there? There's lots of detail here. So if you want to understand Japanese and samurai history, there's lots of books by Stephen Turnbull that you can rely on, and this is really good, so I highly recommend them. Another book that came in handy was Samurai Arms, Armour and the Tactics of Warfare by Antony Cummins. This is an awesome book because this goes into a lot of detail about the armour itself, be it the old Yoroi armour and the newer armour of the Edo period. For example, this one here. This is the sort of armour that the Taira clan and the Minamoto clan wore and fought during the Genpei War. And this book goes into all the small bits and pieces of the armour. For example, this is how the gauntlets looked, such as this one, or the little sleeves that they wore for those who were shooting arrows, or maybe the thigh protectors of the thigh protectors here. These came later, and also the sort of like the symbol here they wore for the greaves to cover their shins for protection. So there's lots of detail here in this book about the samurai armor. So if you want more information about the samurai armor, this book is for you. And a while ago, I drew illustrations for a video for him. And if you'd like to see it, I'll include the link to that video down below. Now, to understand the key differences between the Taira clan and the Minamoto clan were based in the east of Japan, and they were constantly under the threat, as I mentioned previously, by the Emishi barbarians. And these were the Ainu of Japan. And these are the people who lived up north in the Hokkaido area, and they were the barbarians. And in fact, these are the people, the Hokkaido or the Hokkaido people, the Ainu, the Emishi barbarians. These are the people who were mounted archers. They were archers riding horses, and it was actually from them that the Minamoto clan learned, oh, here's how we're going to fight. We're going to fight like them. And the Minamoto clan adapted accordingly and copied their tactics, and that's how the Eastern samurai formed. And that's how we came to know as the samurai today. And so this is the book to understand the Emishi barbarians, or the Ainu, or the aborigines of Japan, or particularly the north of Japan in the Hokkaido area. It's this book, The Ainu or Japan, by John Batchelor. And they were based in the east of Japan. So this is they were fought in the east of Japan. Or in the west of Japan, the Taira clan were a seafaring clan. They were always fighting against the pirates. So to understand them briefly, this is the book I recommend, once again by Stephen Turnbull, Pirates of the Far East, from 811 to 1639. See that one? Very good book. Now, the Taira clan were hired to fight off the pirates because during that time period, China was trading with Japan constantly, and they were always raided by pirates. So since the emperor didn't have an army of his own, he simply hired samurai as hitmen. Okay, guys, you sort out those guys over there. You go fight those guys over there. So this is the situation the emperor was. So in the east, he had barbarians to fight off, and he needed the Minamoto clan for that. And in the west of Japan, he needed the seafaring, the pirate slayers, the Taira clan. So mounted cavalry, and you had the seafarers. That's the difference between the Minamoto clan and the Taira clan. And right here, to understand briefly, the early samurai armor. This is by Anthony J. Bryant. We're caught up in all this. This is how they looked and appeared. And this book talks about the early samurai, how they looked. But if this is too brief for you, there's a very beautifully illustrated book called Samurai, An Illustrated History by Mitsuoka Kulle. Big book, full of lots of illustrations. I mean, this book is packed with diagrams and illustrations and lots of details, lots of beautiful photographs, like this one, and plenty of sketches and illustrations, like this one. And it's an amazing book. I highly recommend this one. So if you want to see what the armor looked like and understand how the Minamoto clan and the Taira clan looked, this is the one to go for. lots of details here. And right in the middle of all this, to stir up all the hatred between the Minamoto clan and the Taira clan, were these warrior monks. Now, these Buddhist warrior monks were not fighting each other over religion. They were mainly fighting over money and land. And they were always using religious intimidation tactics to coerce the emperor to give them more money, give me more land. And because of the constant political corruption, the constant battle between the two, this is one of the things that got the Genpei War started as well, because they were always fighting amongst themselves. And so this is the book, another book by Stephen Turnbull, to understand the Japanese warrior monks. It's called Japanese Warrior Monks, AD 949 to 1603, again by Stephen Turnbull. So, brilliant books. I highly recommend them so that you could understand the differences between the Minamoto clan and the Taira clan, the sort of armor they wore, what they were up against, and who else got tied up in between, and other people who caused the Genpei War, and more detailed armor pictures and illustrations. Now, to conclude, to understand how the Japanese people thought and what they believed, it is important to understand the religion and their philosophy behind all this. So I recommend the Kojiki by Donald J. Philippi. This is literally the Japanese Bible. This sums up pretty much all the gods, the creation story, the history of ancient Japan, all rolled into one. I mean, this is a brilliant, amazing book. I keep coming back to this, and it's just a wonderful, wonderful tale of the beginning of Japan. It's like a religious history. Now, of course, there's a lot of mix up with the names, and a lot of long names like Kisumimi no Mikoto, things like that. There's a lot of long names like this, and it can be quite confusing. So if this is too complicated or too in-depth for you, there's another good book that covers the mythology of Japan, and it's called The Handbook of Japanese Mythology by Michael Ashkenazi. This is a good book that simplifies the mythology of Japan in a nutshell. This talks about the first emperor of Japan, the princes and the gods, ghosts, the sort of things the Japanese people believed, for example, and they briefly touches upon the Shintoism and the mountains and the sort of gods they worshipped and what god represented what. So if you want to understand a little bit of the mindset of the Japanese and what they believed in that time period of ancient Japan, these are the two books to get. These are amazing books, fascinating and eye-opening. Now, previously, I talked about this book, The Tale of the Heike. The Heike is the other name given to the Taira clan, and this is a very detailed book written like an epic poem, and it's beautiful. I mean, this one talks about who did what to whom, when and why, and how the Taira clan clashed with the Fujiwara clan, the Buddhist monks, and the Minamoto clan. It talks about the Genpei War at the end and how they fell. This is the rise and fall of the Taira clan and how they took over the imperial court and how Taira Kiyomori wanted all of Japan under his command and how they antagonized everyone along the way, which led up to the Genpei War. Now, the trouble is, this book only focuses on the elites, like the noble women, the noble men, the lords, and the monarchy, but we don't get to hear any perspective from the peasants or the samurai. Of course, they do use samurai. They are samurai families, but these are the elites. These are the wealthy nobles. So what I want to do in my Japanese graphic novel is to provide a perspective from the peasants and the samurai. So if you want to understand the peasant perspective better, as I mentioned before, I recommend the social economic history of Japan to 1600. And if you want to understand the government system better, the history of Japan to 1334. So I recommend these. They all go hand in hand. They're all linked and they work great together. Without these books, it would never have been possible for me to start developing my Japanese graphic novel. I mean, this is the script. This is how long and detailed it is and full of notes. I mean, everything I've covered so far in this video, I mean, all the books, there's just a small number of the books that I use. There's so many of them, but we can go on forever. but the ones I've covered are the main ones that came in handy, that enabled me to create this script in order to help me create my Japanese graphic novel, which is Chino Monogatari, Bloody Tales. I'm writing it and I'm drawing it myself, with the help of a Japanese translator named Yuki Kanagawa. Japanese dialogue, English subtitles, told this story of the Genpei War, the things that led up to it, and the Genpei War itself. This is only one scene. So if you want a free sample, there's a digital copy. The link to it is in the description below. And I've also included the link to the physical copy of it, where you can buy it on Amazon. So if this is only a sample of what's yet to come. So if you want to see the samurai perspective and the peasant perspective, and this one in particular, the peasant perspective, I recommend you check it out. I hope you enjoyed this video. See you all later. Take care.